New tonight, opening day for the 2021 Iowa State Fair, a little more than 2 weeks away. And for the first time, law enforcement is adding walk-through metal detectors at all main gates.
The State Fair Police Department tells Local 5's Lake and McGee it was time for an enhancement of security.
branch Someros.
Y para los intérpretes judiciales del Poder Judicial. I do, Your Honor.
I do. Okay, thanks to both. Good morning and welcome. We open the record today in Poweshiek County, case number FECR 010822. State of Iowa is represented in this matter by Poweshiek County Attorney Bart Claver. Also with Mr. Claver is Assistant Attorney General Scott Brown. We have personally present today the defendant, Cristhian Bahena Rivera. Mr. Rivera is accompanied with both of his attorneys of record, Jennifer and Chad Freeze. Should also be noted for the record that Mr. Rivera has the benefit of two interpreters who have been sworn in by the court for today's hearing. I would also take this time to point out that as we talk today, please be cognizant that we have both interpreters and a court reporter taking everything down. So talk at a rate that they can do their respective jobs and also speak up, please. File reflects that on May 28th of 2021, jury in this case returned a guilty verdict. Subsequent to that, on July 8th of 2021, the defendant, through his attorneys, filed two motions. One was a motion for new trial. The other was a motion in arrest of judgment. State resists both of the motions. Today is the date and time set for hearing on those motions. At this time, what record would the defense like to make?
At this point, we'd call Deputy Joe Meyer, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Meyer, do you want to step up here? Mr. Meyer, I'll swear you in before you're seated. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Okay, go ahead and be seated if you would, please. Mr. Freeze, you may proceed.
Would you state your name, please?
Joseph Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R.
Sir, how long have you been employed with the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office?
I've been with the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office for approximately 8 years.
You weren't involved with the investigation into the death of Mollie Tibbetts much.
No, I was not.
However, you this morning presented us and the government with some new information concerning some statements concerning Mollie Tibbetts, correct?
I did.
Did you receive a report last night concerning information about Mollie Tibbetts and her abduction?
Wasn't about her abduction, no.
Was she mentioned in a report made last evening?
Yes.
Please tell us the report that was made to the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office that you received last evening. You need to just speak up just a little bit.
Yes. An individual named Scott Carter called in to complain because some people were calling him names that he didn't like.
Let me stop you there. Who is Scott Carter?
Scott Carter is a sex offender that lives at the trailer park here in Montezuma.
Okay. Is that the trailer park on 520 Front Street, Montezuma, Iowa?
520 North Front, yes.
And what did Mr. Carter, what was his complaint?
Like I said, he was complaining because a woman named Sarah and her sister were calling him a pedophile, and he didn't like that.
He was being harassed by a woman named Sarah and her sister.
Yes.
Does Sarah have a last name?
He did not know what her last name was.
Do we know who Sarah is?
He referred to her being Xavier's mother, so it would be Sarah Harrelson.
Did you investigate that complaint?
I did not go out and speak with Sarah and her sister. His complaint was several hours old by the time it had been given to me by dispatch.
So did Mr. Carter elaborate on any information he had concerning Sarah? Does Sarah have a last name?
In regards to this case,
Yes.
He stated that one of Sarah's friends named Sam had told him that Sarah had told her that Sarah had seen Mollie at a trap house in New Sharon.
So he reported that, I know it's a couple ways down the line, but Sarah Harrelson had reported to someone, and it's now gotten to Scott Carter, that Sarah had seen Mollie in New Sharon.
Supposedly, yes.
Do you identify where in New Sharon that Mollie was supposedly seen?
No.
Do you identify the time frame in which Mollie was supposedly seen in New Sharon?
No.
Do you identify the circumstances under which Mollie was supposedly seen in New Sharon?
No.
Do you indicate any other individuals who were in New Sharon along with Mollie?
No.
Do you indicate anyone named George was involved in this?
Yes.
What did he tell you about George?
He stated that George was a member of the Mexican mafia.
And did he mention that George had any connection to that home in New Sharon?
No.
So what relevance does George and the Mexican mafia have in this story?
He stated that Sarah was tight with the Mexican mafia and that this George had been there approximately 2 weeks ago. He also stated that at some point during the investigation into Xavier's disappearance, that George had contacted Sarah and told her to keep her mouth shut.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Any cross?
Deputy Meyer, correct?
Yes,
You brought this information to me just right before the hearing started, correct?
that is correct.
And this information came to law enforcement's attention last night, correct?
Yes.
So to make sure I follow this correctly, it's a bit complicated, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
It's somebody saying someone heard someone else say something, correct?
Something along those lines, yes.
All right, so we're talking about Scott Carter, correct?
Yes.
He was the one that came forward and complained, is that right?
Yes,
He is a sex offender.
that is correct.
Are you familiar with him otherwise?
Throughout the Xavier Harrelson investigation, he has called in about people harassing him several times.
Okay, so this is not the first time he's called in about someone harassing him, correct?
That is correct.
How many times, if you know, has Scott Carlson called law enforcement to say someone is harassing him?
Scott Carter,
I'm sorry, Scott Carter.
I'm unsure on the number.
Well, more than the time that you're just repeating, correct? Or
Yes.
testifying to here today?
Yes. At least 2 other times that when I was still on the night shift, I know another deputy handled.
All right. So did Scott Carter, did you actually meet with him?
No, I did not.
Did anybody in law enforcement meet with him?
No.
Did you talk to him on the phone?
Yes.
And is that where you received your information?
Yes, it is.
And what time, what date and time did you have this phone call with Scott Carter?
It was July 26th at approximately 4 p.m.
Okay, so yesterday at 4 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
So again, to make sure I understand what he was saying, Scott Carter had talked to Sam, who heard from Sarah that she had seen Mollie Tibbetts in a trap house in New Sharon, correct?
That is correct.
Do I follow that correctly?
I believe so, yes.
All right. So it's third-hand information. Would that be true?
Yes.
All right. And New Sharon is how far from Montezuma, if you know?
I'm not sure on the exact mileage.
Okay. Is it within a half-hour drive?
Yes.
Okay. And is New Sharon located in northern Mahaska County?
Yes, it is.
Okay. That's all.
Mr. Freeze, anything else to this witness?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer, thank you for being here. You're excused.
Thank you.
Defense may call their next witness.
Your Honor, we call Arnie Mackey.
Mr. Mack, good morning to you. Switch.
Your Honor, just the interpreter is going to respectfully ask the witness to get close to the mic.
We'll do it.
Yes.
Good morning, sir. To the extent you can, raise your right hand so I can swear you in, okay? You swear or affirm the testimony that you give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated. Yeah. Mr. Mack, you try to speak into the microphones and just make sure you speak up and project if you would, okay?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Freaks.
Would you state your name, spelling both your first and last name, sir?
Yes, Arnie, A-R-N-E, Mackey, M-A-K-I,
Sir, how old are you?
46,
And you are presently a resident in the Iowa Department of Corrections, correct?
yes,
And where are you serving your time?
in Oakdale right now.
What charge are you serving your time on?
Domestic violence,
And what is your projected discharge date
December 4th,
of this year?
yes,
And the conviction you find yourself serving time for, out of what county did you get that conviction?
Saguenay,
That's Keokuk County?
correct,
Are you from Iowa originally?
what was that?
Are you from Iowa originally?
No, I'm from Upper Michigan,
When did you move to Iowa?
July 20, excuse me, it was the end of July, or end of June,
Of
the 25th, somewhere around there,
2020?
yes,
So you've been in Iowa about a year.
so far now, yes.
Okay. Did you move here because of family?
No, I moved here because my ex-girlfriend wanted to be close to her mom.
And she was the victim of your offense?
Correct.
Now, you found yourself in the Iowa Department of Corrections, but before then, were you in the Keokuk County Jail?
Yes,
And how long did you serve time in the Keokuk County Jail?
3 months from July 26th through October 19th of 2020.
And during your time in the Keokuk County Jail, did you come to know an individual named Gavin Jones?
Yes,
And was Mr. Jones also in the Keokuk County Jail during that time?
yes,
Do you recall how long a period of time you served in the Keokuk County Jail with Mr. Jones?
about 21 days.
Did you become friends, so to speak, with Mr. Jones?
Yes,
I'm going to put in front of you on the TV screen there what's been marked previously as Defendant's Exhibit C. Let me know if you see it.
I think the court's gonna need to bring it up on the screen.
We'll have
It's off. I don't think it's gonna reach. Is it up?
Are you hooked in?
Yes. I know it just worked like 15 minutes ago. I'll just do my exhibits.
The other option is to be alone, but I mean, you came up fine Friday afternoon and this morning. Will you unhook and rehook?
Old school. If you want me to do it old school, I can do it old school.
Let's do that.
Okay, permission to approach?
Yes, permission granted.
I'm gonna switch these out. Cause I think this will pick you up better.
Thanks, Carrie. And then Mr. Freeze, yes, proceed.
Mr. Mackey, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes. It's defendant's Exhibit C. Do you recognize the individual in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Does that photograph fairly and accurately depict the individual that you know as Gavin Jones?
Correct.
Is that how he appeared when you and he were in the Keokuk County Jail together?
Just longer hair.
I'd offer Exhibit C, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Your Honor, I'd object to the extra information in this exhibit as contains several identification and information that the defendant's not qualified to testify to in addition to the photograph. There's no foundation or authentication laid to introduce this extraneous evidence outside of the photograph. So I object on that basis.
Here's what we'll do. I'll admit C into evidence, and I would ask that if the state has any concerns about any information that's contained in there, share that with the defense, make sure it's redacted before it's put into the system.
Very well. Now, Mr. Mackey, when you were in jail with Mr. Jones, did you know why Mr. Jones was in jail?
No, I wasn't.
Did Mr. Jones get released from the Keokuk County Jail prior to you being released?
Yes.
When Mr. Jones was released from the Keokuk County Jail, did you and he have a conversation about what he was doing next?
No.
Was he going to another jail?
No.
Did he need bail money?
Yes, he did.
Why did he need bail money?
Because he was afraid to go back to Marion County. He was afraid of being indicted.
Is that what he told you?
Yes.
Did he tell you why he was afraid of being indicted?
No, he wouldn't tell me.
Was he able to post bail out of Keokuk County to avoid going to Marion County Jail?
Yes, I did with my help.
Okay, you gave him money?
Correct.
How much money did you have available to give him?
I told him, I said if he got 100, I would give him the 70.
So you gave him $70.
Correct.
When you were booked out of the Keokuk County Jail, were you given a book out sheet?
No.
But the records of the Keokuk County Jail would establish that you gave him, in fact, $70.
Correct.
Did you have a conversation with the sheriff when you asked to transfer money to Gavin Jones?
Yes, I did.
Because you had to tell someone to move $70 from your inmate account over to Gavin Jones's inmate account, right?
Yes.
And what did the sheriff say to you?
Can I say his name?
Sure.
Adam Clark took me to the side, brought me to another room. He looked at me and he said, "Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to bail him out?" And I told him, I said that he's a troubled kid and he needs direction. I felt bad for him. He said he's not going to do nothing for you when he gets out or threaten your family. I just said no.
So you'd gotten to a situation where you kind of felt some empathy for Mr. Jones.
Correct.
Did Mr. Jones, over that period of time you two were in jail, begin to confide in you?
Yeah, he got comfortable with me.
How much older do you think you are than Mr. Jones?
Jones is 21,
And you again are how old?
46.
Okay. Back up just a little bit so you aren't getting the. During the time you were in Keokuk County, did Mr. Jones talk about the death of a woman named Mollie Tibbetts with you?
Yes, he did.
And when he spoke to you, was he speaking to you in this comfortable fashion or was it braggadocious? Describe to me the context.
He didn't have no emotion. He just was talking like we talk right now.
So he wasn't bragging,
No,
wasn't showing off.
no, he was just serious.
How did the conversation begin about Mollie Tibbetts?
When I went back in from talking to Adam Clark, I went back in and he asked me what he said. And I told him, I said that he wanted to know if you were going to do anything for me when you leave or threaten my family.
So this conversation occurred shortly before Mr. Jones bailing out.
Yes, because he had like 13 more days left, somewhere around there.
So the conversation then he just started to tell you about his involvement in the death of Mollie Tibbetts.
He told me when I told him that, he's like, yeah, he knows that I'm dangerous. And I just kind of shrugged my shoulders like, yeah, I don't think so. And then he's like, do you know the Tibbet case? I said, no, I've only been here a month. I don't know nobody.
Okay. So Mr. Jones told you that the deputy knew he was dangerous. And then he goes on to tell you or ask you if you know about the Tibbetts case.
Yeah,
And again, his affect is just normal.
yeah.
Okay. And did it stop there, the conversation?
And then I told him, I said, no. He's like, yeah. He's like, I killed her. I'm like, I said, I don't believe you. And then he said, you know, the guy that's being charged for it right now? I said, no, I don't. He's like, reset him up. He's like, it was a sex trafficking case gone wrong. And I stabbed her to death and put her in a tarp, me and my black friend that doesn't speak English that good, and set him up. And I still told him, I said, I don't think you're telling, I don't believe you.
Why did you not believe him?
Because why would someone tell me something so heinous like that? I just thought he was trying to be tough.
Okay. So he just tells you that he killed her. He told you he stabbed her?
Stabbed her to death.
And he told you that the guy that they had charged is the wrong guy.
Correct. He says reset him up. He did not kill him.
How is his demeanor at this point? Is he still pretty?
Still normal. And then I told him, I said, what's this sex trafficker? What's that all about? I said, what's that? I said, I don't know nothing about it. And that's when he started telling me about him being kicked out of his house since he's been 13, living in trap houses and on the street around Des Moines.
Okay.
And he said that him and this guy named Dalton Hansen, which also I need to add that his AKA street name was called Debo, and they would be living in these trap houses at that age. And that's when the office, when I was speaking with Dalton Hansen, he said that he was in the trap house when Adam Clark arrested Gavin Jones. And then I told him, I said, what's with this sex trafficker? And then he started telling me that it's a person that calls this guy and wants some specific girl, color, hair, eyes, weight, and this sex trafficker will hire another guy to go steal a vehicle and stake out the neighborhood and get this girl, whoever, and bring her to the trap house and then do the thing.
Did he give you any type of idea as to how this particular operation he was working with was run? Like any players?
Yes. He told me the name, but I forgot the name. But he said he'd always see this one big guy come in dressed up nice and clean with always a new car. And he would talk to these other guys that were at the trap house. I don't know if they were dealing drugs but he said he'd always see women, girls coming in and out, going down the basement. He said he's seen a lot of weird things.
Did he give you the location of the trap house or any trap house?
No, he didn't.
Did he mention anything about law enforcement?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He said the sex trafficker lived in Tama, and he had a wife with two daughters, and that he'd have the Tama police work for this guy to get these girls. And
Did he say Tama Police or did he mention the Tama County Sheriff?
no, just Tama police.
And the Tama County Police or Tama Police, would they, according to Gavin, help abduct women?
That's what Gavin told me.
Did he give you a name of any Tama Police?
No, he didn't. He says, this sex trafficker knows a lot of important people.
Okay. Did he indicate to you that he saw Mollie Tibbetts in a trap house?
No, he didn't.
He didn't tell you that he saw Mollie in the basement of a house?
Yes, he had.
Tell us about that.
He said, well, going further with the sex trafficker, he was asked Gavin Jones and Dalton, he asked this guy and asked him why these two kids were in this trap house. And the guy said that they were homeless. So the sex trafficker took these two under his wing and started paying for them to go steal vehicles for him. And that's when they stole the vehicle, him, Gavin Jones, Dalton Hansen, and his black friend that couldn't speak English stole the vehicle and then had a shootout with the police. And then drove up to this house and ran down the basement. And when Gavin and his friend were down there, he heard a noise from a room. He opened the door, he seen a woman bound to a chair and gagged.
And was he able to identify that woman?
He later on he did. He went upstairs and said that if the police went to the next house over, they would have caught her. And I said, who's that? Tibbetts. And that's when the sex trafficker said that he had to get rid of her. So he went back down there and stabbed her to death and then put her in a tarp.
Did he talk about how they were able to set up the man who was eventually convicted?
What's that?
Did he say how he was able to set up the man who was eventually convicted?
Yes, he told me he went back upstairs and the sex trafficker said that the defendant almost tipped him off. So that's why they had to get rid of him and then take the body and plant it to look like he did it.
Did he say why they picked this particular person?
No, because they almost tipped, because the defendant almost tipped the sex trafficker off. That's what Gavin told me.
Now, you didn't tell this story until almost the very end of Mr. Bahena's trial, right?
What's that?
You didn't tell any of this stuff until the very end of Mr. Bahena's trial.
Me?
Yes.
I haven't said nothing for a whole year because I didn't really believe him. And when I did believe him, I seen two clips on Fox News.
When you saw the clips on Fox News, what were the clips that caught your attention?
One of them, the first one was with the defendant. They were saying that he had a family and excuse me, and had no criminal record. And the second clip said that he didn't kill her and that he was set up by two men. And right there, I told myself, my conscience told me, I said I should say something, even if it's not true.
Okay. So based upon those clips, what did you do?
I went and talked to my boss at work and
A chaplain? You took a
Chaplain.
chaplain?
yes,
Now, are you getting any benefit out of telling this story?
no, I'm not.
You're not getting your sentence reduced?
No, I'm not.
So no matter what you say here today, you're still going to be out of prison in December.
Correct.
Nobody's offering you any money.
No,
No one's offering you any promises of a shorter parole, are they?
no.
What's the culture like in prison for people who come forward and testify in open court?
I have no idea.
Is it good?
Probably not, but I'd rather do the right thing.
So you're getting absolutely zero benefit out of telling this version of what Gavin Jones told you.
Zero.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Mackey, you said the info that you got on this case was from the news. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there were two particular clips that you saw that made you think about what you've been told, or that the defendant had a family,
Yes.
and that the defendant said he didn't kill Mollie Tibbetts. Is that right?
No, I seen it. He said where he had a family. They were talking about that he had a family, a wife and kids, and that he didn't have a criminal record.
Was there a second clip?
Yes.
And in that clip, the defendant said that he didn't kill Mollie Tibbetts. Is that right?
Correct.
Did you watch any of the trial testimony?
No, I didn't.
Do you know any of the facts that were presented at the trial?
None.
Did you say that Gavin Jones told you that he'd been kicked out of the house when he was 13 years old? Is that right?
Yes.
And Gavin Jones told you that he'd been staying at trap houses in Des Moines and other places since that time. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you know how old Gavin Jones was in 2017?
No, I don't.
He's about 21 years old now, correct?
Yes.
So 4 years ago, he would have been 17, correct?
Correct.
Did Gavin Jones tell you anything about where he was in late 2017 and early 2018?
No, he hasn't.
You weren't aware that he was in the state's custody from September 2017 to December 2017?
No,
Were you aware that he was in a rehab facility from December 2017 to July 2018?
no,
He didn't tell you that?
no, he hasn't.
Did Gavin Jones tell you that after he left the rehab facility, he went to an assisted living under court supervision?
He didn't tell me none of that.
Was Gavin Jones supposed to pay you back the money that you gave him for his bond?
No,
I'd like to go over the story that Gavin Jones told you. He said he and Dalton Hanson were staying at trap houses. Is that correct?
yes,
And these were actually drug houses.
yes,
And Gavin told you that while he was at one of these drug houses, he made an arrangement with the owner to steal cars, correct?
not the owner. It was a person that always was there to do whatever they do.
And the agreement was made by Gavin Jones and Dalton Hanson with this visitor at the drug house. Is that right?
Yeah, the sex trafficker guy told this one guy and asked him why they were there.
And Gavin told you that he and Dalton Hanson agreed to steal cars for this individual?
Yes,
And they in fact did steal cars for this individual?
yes, a lot of them.
At least that's what Gavin told you?
That's what yes.
And when would this have occurred?
He didn't tell me. He didn't give me no dates or nothing. That's what he said.
And Gavin Jones told you that while he was stealing cars for this individual, he got in a shootout with police, correct?
Correct.
Did he say when that happened?
He didn't say that.
Did he say there were any charges filed as a result of that?
The only one that said anything about it was Dalton Hanson after Gavin Jones left. He said that he was afraid of being indicted. And I told him, I said, for what for? He said, for a shootout with the police.
So this drug house, was this in New Sharon?
I have no idea.
Mr. Mackey, you made a comment that the defendant became involved because he tipped off the sex trafficker. What did you mean by that?
That's what Gavin said. I don't know anything why he said that, but that's what he said.
You were interviewed a couple different times about the statements that Gavin Jones made to you, correct?
Correct.
You were interviewed by law enforcement?
Just state detective.
And you also spoke with an investigator that defense counsel sent to talk with you?
In Mount Pleasant, yes.
I'm sorry, the needs a replication of the answer.
In Mount Pleasant.
Thank you. That's-
And during those interviews, you stated that Gavin Jones told you that Mollie Tibbetts was wrapped in plastic. Is that correct?
Not plastic.
Today you said it was a tarp.
It's a tarp.
In one of those interviews, you said plastic, correct?
Might have.
If the written report says plastic, would that be a better record of what you said than your memory?
Could be.
And you stated in one of those interviews that Gavin Jones told you that he and this other individual cut up Mollie's body, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware that the facts of the case and the evidence did not show that particular fact?
I didn't know, but that's what he did tell me. But I didn't believe him.
You stated to investigators that this man at Atama was wealthy. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall telling one of the interviewers that the reason Gavin told you that Mollie had to be killed was because the search was getting too close?
Say that again.
Do you recall telling one of the interviewers that Gavin had told you the reason that Mollie was killed is because the search for her was getting too close to the location where she was being held?
No.
You don't recall that?
No.
You deny telling interviewers that?
I didn't say that.
So if that statement's reflected in the record of the interviews with you, that would be incorrect?
That'd be incorrect.
Mr. Mackey, just to be clear on time frame, so you were in the Keokuk County Jail with Gavin Jones in July and August of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And you went to prison in November of 2020, correct?
Left October 19th.
You went to prison on October 19th, 2020?
Yes.
And you didn't tell anyone about the statements that Gavin Jones supposedly made to you until May 26th of this year, correct?
Correct.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Freeze, anything else to this witness?
No, sir.
And I just want to confirm with both counsel, he can be excused, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Mackey, thank you for being here. You're excused.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing. My thoughts and prayers goes out to the Tibbetts family.
Mr. Freeze, the defense may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before calling our next witness, I'd offer several different affidavits that we have submitted to the court. These have all been submitted via electronic filing. First, I would submit the affidavit of Lindsay Voss, and this was submitted under seal.
And I have that. And state have any record they wish to make regarding the Voss affidavit?
Judge, I think this will be true for several of these. We haven't had a chance to review them. They just came in this morning whenever I didn't have an email with them. I didn't have EDMS with them. I just need a chance to look at them. I'm not saying that we'll have an objection to it. I think they're allowed to offer evidence by affidavit under the rule.
I think what we'll do, Ms. Freeze, is given Mr. Brown's concern, is we'll get to this, but let's not get to it right now. How's that?
All right, thank you.
And just, Mr. Brown, do you now have those affidavits?
I need to check.
They were submitted yesterday morning, the Lindsay Voss affidavit.
How many other affidavits are there?
Well, I'll make the offer right now, and then I'd offer the affidavit of Lindsay Voss, the affidavit of Corey Beal, the affidavit of Scott Gracious, and the affidavit of Shay Moore at this time.
So those are offered. I'll give the state an opportunity to review those four, and we'll make record later on that.
We can do that quickly at a break, Judge. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Your Honor, I would also offer, we submitted several different documents involving leads that investigators had regarding sex trafficking back in July of 2018, and I'd offer that as part of the record at this time.
Mr. Brown, have you seen those?
What's the number on that one?
It was filed yesterday morning.
If I could just have a moment, Judge, I don't have my EDMS up yet. Let me check.
Okay.
Is there a number on that one, Jimmy?
A number? It's not an exhibit. It was just submitted. It looks like, I don't have a file stamp, but it was file stamped yesterday morning.
Where is it at? What time?
Looks like it was submitted 7/26 at 10:58 a.m.
This is what the problem is, judges. I get a request denied from EDMS that I don't have rights to view the document. So that's what I'm getting. That's probably what the problem was. I'm not saying that they didn't file
Scott,
it
I've got a
yesterday.
paper copy. You want to look at it?
If that's okay.
Yeah, and I think, again, just to keep things moving along here, go ahead and give that to Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown, review that when you can, and we'll make record on it.
Thank you.
Ms. Freeze, any other offers?
Your Honor, before we get to our next witness, the court brought to our attention that the court potentially had contact with Gavin Jones, and we intend to proceed with the court. We're not asking the court to recuse itself, but I do think that it's important enough that it may be made part of the record, so that Mr. Bahena, it's clear that he has had an opportunity to hear the information, and that Mr. Bahena is informed of the information. So I would ask the court to indicate the contact that the court has had with Mr. Jones.
Well, I'll be more than happy to, Ms. Freeze. As I shared with counsel last time we were here, I'm from a small hamlet, that hamlet being Sigourney. Pretty much, we can say virtually everyone knows everyone or comes in contact with everyone at some time in a small town like that. And I simply pointed out to the counsel at that time, given that Mr. Jones's name was brought into the case, and I'll phrase it this way: my son is going into 8th grade. When he was going into 2nd grade, so again, my Sigourney math tells me that would be 6 years ago, Gavin Jones's father, Tony Jones, was my son's baseball coach. Because of that, Gavin Jones was present at a few of the practices. He was also present at a few of the games. To the best of my knowledge, I never spoke to Gavin Jones. And I have to the best of my knowledge, I have not seen Gavin Jones in the last 6 years. After disclosing that, Mr. Freeze indicated there were no problems or concerns. And I guess the more I think about it, again, just to err on the side of caution, I'm comfortable and confident that I disclosed it, but I in no way, shape, or form see there would be any conflict whatsoever regarding myself and Mr. Jones's alleged involvement with the case. Does that answer your question, Ms. Freeze?
It does.
All right, let's proceed then.
I'd call Special Agent Trent Valletta.
Mr. Valletta, you want to step up here? Mr. Valletta, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Okay, go ahead and be seated, please. Hold on one second.
Again, the deputy is going to respectfully ask the witness to speak to the microphone.
If you do that, that'd be great, Mr. Valletta. And with that, then, defense may proceed.
Please state your full name.
Trent Valletta. It's V as in Victor, ILETA.
Where do you work?
I work for the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation in Cedar Rapids.
What is your position there?
I work for the Major Crimes Unit. I'm a special agent. I'm an investigator for the Major Crimes Unit.
Were you the special agent that was in charge of the Mollie Tibbetts investigation?
Yes, I was.
And so you oversaw the investigation involving the disappearance and the death of Mollie Tibbetts. Is that right?
That is correct.
It's my understanding that for approximately a month, that there was an active investigation involving the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts until her body was found. Is that right?
That's correct.
So for approximately a month, you were working to locate Mollie Tibbetts dead or alive. Is that right?
Yes.
Were there systems in place to process any leads involving the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes.
Explain what systems there were.
I think for the most part, we were receiving about 100 tips a day. We had an FBI agent assigned to basically a board on the wall to, he would assign leads. We also had agents that weren't there that would sift through, like psychic tips, a lot of the more bizarre stuff. Our lead management we tried to make it as efficient as possible where we would follow up on credible leads.
So what you would do is you would take any lead that came in, is that right?
Yes.
And then with the leads, you would assign leads that you deemed were credible. Is that right?
Well, we looked into everything. But like I said, psychic stuff, there's why. But yes, we looked into just about everything.
You also interviewed hundreds of people involving the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts. Is that right?
That's correct.
And those people, you'd ask them any information that they had involving Mollie Tibbetts. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, sir, is it true that during the course of your investigation, there were multiple tips that came up that Mollie Tibbetts could be a victim of sex trafficking?
I don't remember any tips that she was a victim of sex trafficking, but I didn't see all of them either.
So you don't recall any sort of tips that Mollie Tibbetts could have been the victim of sex trafficking?
It's possible. We had tips that she was eating ice cream in Sioux Falls and eating tacos in Denver, Colorado. So it would not surprise me if there were tips that she was a victim of sex trafficking.
All right, so we're working kind of old school because we can't get the computers hooked up. So I'd ask Mr. Brown to bring the document that is labeled submission of documents involving sex trafficking to you. Yes, thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I'd offer submission of documents involving sex trafficking.
Is it marked as an exhibit?
It is not.
So you're just offering it?
Yes, I'd ask the court to take judicial notice of it.
Okay. Any,
Judge, there's no way the court can take judicial notice of this document. First of all, it needs to be marked so the record's clear. Secondly, it's full of what appears to be law enforcement intelligence information, not only, I think, from state officials, maybe local officers, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is voluminous. I don't know how many pages it is. It is, we would object based upon that it's, I mean, I don't know what the relevance of it is. I can't even get into it on EDMS. I just got handed this document a couple of minutes ago.
well, the
anyway.
short answer, Ms. Freeze, is that I'm going to sustain the objection in that it's inappropriate for the court to take judicial notice of it. I'll just leave it at the objection sustained. Judicial notice is an improper ask at this point in time regarding this document.
Your Honor, at this time, I would make a professional statement, and this is directly relevant to the Brady violation that we are claiming. What we are claiming is that the state failed to produce the investigation involving the James Lowe search warrant and the trap house investigation. Specifically, that'd be Defendant's Exhibit A. So we're submitting to the court that it was a Brady violation for the state to not produce that evidence to the defense. What I make is a professional statement, Your Honor, that we have reviewed our discovery. We have reviewed the discovery for anything that involves sex trafficking, and this is what has been provided. In respect to Mr. Brown, I submitted this under seal. I have no control over whether or not the clerk of court gives him access to documents or not, but I recognize that this had confidential information, so it has been submitted under seal. But I do think that the appropriate way for the court to take judicial notice of this is to do that. Otherwise, I would offer this and I'll mark it as Defendant's Exhibit H.
Well, what I would say at this point in time, I don't have enough information to do anything beyond what I've done. If you want to ask further questions of the witness as it relates to this document, that's fine. And then you can renew your position at a later date based on what evidence you establish.
What I'm saying, though, is that I'm making a professional statement that this information was received from the state via discovery. And I'm asking the court, again, I'm renewing my request to offer this entire document.
Well, is there any objection or does the state disagree that this was provided from the state to the defense?
So I'm not sure because I haven't had a chance to look all the way through it. But in order to move past this, what I would request that the court do, which I think you're probably going to do, is accept this exhibit and put it under seal so only parties in the court can review it. And we are confident that the court will give it the weight that it deserves.
And that does seem like a fair resolution. So the court will take it under consideration. It'll be taken consideration under seal. In other words, it won't be shared with anyone else. And the court will make it then part of the record for this hearing and again, give it the weight it deserves. So with that, go ahead and proceed.
Sir, I'd ask you to turn to the second page that involves an interview of Brian Keegan.
Okay.
And sir, you are the case agent in this, the Mollie Tibbetts case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you would review any leads or delegate those leads to another agent. Isn't that right?
That's true.
One of the leads that you received was by a Brian Keegan. Isn't that correct?
Yep, that's correct. Sorry.
And Mr. Keegan indicated that he does not know, but he's seen stuff on television about sex trafficking and that he thought that may be what happened to Mollie Tibbetts. Is that correct?
Yes, he did say he saw it on television that there's sex trafficking in the world. Yes.
Another person that you interviewed was a Hope Beck. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's the next report that is attached. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Beck also stated that she wondered if Mollie Tibbetts was a victim of sex trafficking. Is that correct?
Yes, she stated she wonders if she was a victim of sex trafficking.
Now, Hope Beck was one of Mollie Tibbetts' best friends. Is that right?
Yes, she was.
They went to school together. Is that correct?
Yes.
They spent a lot of time together.
I would imagine if they're best friends, they did, yes.
And in fact, I think she was one of the last people that Snapchatted Mollie Tibbetts. Is that correct?
Yes.
So she was somebody that was close to Mollie Tibbetts. Is that right?
Yes.
And she also indicated she thought there may be a connection to sex trafficking. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's how we perceive what the statement is. It looks to me like she is hoping that she wasn't a victim of sex trafficking, but she doesn't give information that she believes Mollie is a victim of sex trafficking.
Well, what law enforcement does is you're trained to document interviews. Is that right?
That is correct.
Do you document interviews verbatim?
For the most part, they're summaries unless they're an official transcript.
And so if it's a summary, how is it determined what information gets in a report?
It's solely on the investigator taking notes and the investigator typing. I have no idea the mindset of someone putting information in a report.
Well, in this case, Special Agent Ryan Herman provided the information about Hope Beck. Is that right?
Yes.
And fair to say that it was important enough for Ryan Herman to note in his report. Isn't that correct?
Okay, so during the initial part of the investigation, we looked at all different kinds of things. We looked if Mollie ran away with someone else. We looked if Mollie had drug habits that would cause her to go missing. We looked at all these different kinds of things. An appropriate question would be to ask someone, what do you think could have happened? It doesn't mean that the person had information that something happened. What their answer was, and as I'm flipping through all of this, is speculation by people. None of it's credible information. It's merely speculation. And I see you also have psychic tips highlighted. So I would say that, yes, we got all kinds of speculation, hopes that she wasn't hurt, hopes that she wasn't kidnapped, hopes that she wasn't sex trafficked, hopes that she didn't run away. No one knew what happened to her.
So Special Agent Valletta, it was Ryan Herman that interviewed Hope Beck. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
And Ryan Herman thought it was important enough to note that Beck stated that she wondered if Tibbetts was a victim of sex trafficking. Is that right?
Yes, and I think I already answered that.
All right. Now, sir, the next person, the next report is a Stephen Gibbons. You see that report?
Yes.
And that was another report that was produced by Special Agent Ray Fiedler. Is that right?
Yes. No. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Yes, that's true.
And Gibbons also stated that there are people being kidnapped for human trafficking. He said that is a definitive statement that that is what is happening in his community. Is that right?
That's not true at all.
Well, what he said, go ahead and read the statement.
Gibbons stated people are being kidnapped for human trafficking and that someone may have taken her for that.
So what he made is he made a statement that people are being kidnapped for human trafficking in the community. Isn't that right?
Again, I don't see where he says in this community. Again, it's kind of akin to the watching things on television statement. I think there's a perception in the world that, and we all know this, there is sex trafficking in the world. No one's saying that it's being done in Poweshiek County.
Well, sir, New Sharon is near Poweshiek County. Isn't that right?
Yes, it is.
And you're aware that there was a search warrant that was done involving James Lowe's residence. Isn't that right?
I was made aware of it when you guys filed your motion 2 weeks ago, something like that.
And that was a sex trafficking investigation. Isn't that right?
Yes, and I believe it was a baseless investigation too.
All right. Well, you're aware that there was, and sir, I guess you're aware that a victim came forward to investigators, correct?
On the New Sharon?
Yes.
So, yes, that was a couple weeks ago when you filed your motion about
All
it.
right. Have you read over this search warrant? Because I'm happy to provide you with a copy.
No, I haven't, but again, I had no involvement in that. And my understanding is that it was investigated and found to be a baseless complaint.
Well, sir, you're saying that it's a baseless investigation. Have you read the search warrant?
No, I have not read the search warrant.
Are you aware that 2 people came forward and said that they were sex trafficked by James Lowe?
Judge, I'm going to object. There's been no tie at all through any witness, any document, any pleading between this investigation that Ms. Freeze is asking Agent Valletta about and the disappearance and death of Mollie Tibbetts. Zero. It has no relevance here.
At this point in time, I'll sustain that objection because the point's a valid one. There is no connection from what we've talked about here today between Mr. Lowe and what brings us here today.
Well, Your Honor, that's what we're doing today is we're tying them together.
Go ahead and get there then.
Sir, the next report that I'd ask you to turn to is a report by Avery Karras. Are you there, sir?
Yes.
And Avery Karras was a person that was working for Blattner Energy, I think on the wind turbines. You recall there was a group of people working in the area at that time?
Yes, there was.
And Karras also reported to you that it's an odd coincidence that there was another young girl that went missing near a project that he was working on. Is that right?
I object to on the same basis, Judge. It has no relevance. Even though it's part of their exhibit that I'm sure the court's going to look at, it still has no relevance.
It's already in the record, Your Honor.
Objection's over. We'll go ahead and answer.
Looking at the statement, he said another girl went missing in Winchester, Indiana during July of 2017.
And so what he indicated to you is that he thought it was strange that in the same place that Blattner Energy was working in another location, there was a girl that went missing. Is that right?
That's what he said, yes.
Now, sir, the next thing I'd ask you to do is to turn to, it's a neighborhood canvas questionnaire by Donna Smith.
Okay.
And this person also said that their opinion was that this was sex trafficking. Is that right?
That's what they said.
Now, Montezuma, Iowa is a town that is located, Brooklyn, Iowa is a town that's located very close to I-80. Is that right?
That's true.
Approximately how many miles is Brooklyn from I-80?
I think it's a mile off the exit. I'm not sure what. She has 2 miles, but I think it's actually closer than that.
In your training and experience, is there a larger drug presence in towns that are located close to an interstate?
Oh, I have no way. That would be a much better question for a narcotics agent. No way of speculating on that.
Right, so you don't believe that, you don't, in your training experience, believe that towns that are located near an interstate have a higher drug presence?
The best way I could answer that is I think there's a tremendous drug problem in just about every small town in Iowa. I don't know if the location matters that much.
Sir, there was also a search warrant that was done involving this case in Indianapolis, isn't that right?
Involving Mollie Tibbetts' case?
Yes,
In Indianapolis, Indiana?
yes.
Boy, I don't remember that, but it could be true, yes.
You're not aware that there was a search warrant that was done involving what was believed to be sex trafficking in Indianapolis?
Judge, I'm on the same objection. I know this is part of the documents that are the exhibit, but there's simply no relevance here. What does the sex trafficking investigation in Indiana or any tips in Indiana have to do with this case? Absolutely nothing. So we object to relevance in going over this. It's a waste of time.
Mr. Brown, we agreed that I would give the weight to this that it deserves. And I guess because of that, we'll let the defense play it out as they wish to. So overruled. Go ahead.
Would you mind rereading the question?
You're not aware that there was a search warrant that was done involving what was believed to be sex trafficking in Indianapolis.
Is it part of the Iowa DCI or FBI that did the search warrant?
Well, it was produced, yes,
By us?
yes,
That we did it?
yes.
Can I see the search warrant?
I don't have it. Sir, and I'll ask the questions. You're not aware of a search warrant that was done in Indianapolis, Indiana?
No, I'm not. No, I do not remember that at all.
Now, sir, circling back to this James Lowe investigation, you understand that the alleged victim indicated that she was abducted from the Casey's in Brooklyn, Iowa.
I was never part of the James Lowe investigation.
Are you aware now that this alleged victim indicated that she was abducted from a Casey's in Brooklyn, Iowa?
You're making me aware of it now. My knowledge of this investigation was a call to the investigator, Adam DeCamp, who told me that the victim was interviewed, they did a search warrant, and the complaint was baseless. That's all I know about this James Lowe complaint.
So this alleged victim, this woman indicated that she was sex trafficked, and you're saying that it was still baseless.
I'm saying that other people investigated and found it to be baseless. I had no involvement in that case.
Wouldn't you agree, sir, that if you had that information in that month that Mollie Tibbetts was missing, that would be relevant information?
Well, I suppose it would depend when I got that information. If I got that information after Cristhian Rivera confessed and took us to the body and we were able to corroborate his entire confession, then I probably would have disregarded that.
Well, sir, you agree with me that it would certainly be relevant information for you to follow up on. Isn't that right?
Again, I don't know how that would have any relevance towards Cristhian Rivera's confession that was completely corroborated from start to finish on video and after Miranda. But however, if it happened before that, we would have paid attention to it.
So, sir, you agree with me that it would be relevant information in your investigation, isn't that right?
Yeah. Before the Cristhian Rivera confession, it would have been something we would have looked into.
All right. Now, sir, I'd ask you to turn, now we're going into leads, and I'd ask you to turn to lead 3900.
Before we get to that lead, let's take our morning recess. We'll be in recess for the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Well, that's where they got it. It's like
Do you guys, I missed the beginning because I was kind of like rushing to get the stream on and find the correct one off of the news page, but did they say Gavin was going to go on the stand today, or they didn't say about Gavin? Dana says if law enforcement didn't check all this out before in relation to Mollie's disappearance, this happening is on them. They failed. Hang on one second. This happening is on them. They failed Mollie and her family, in my opinion, but to have checked all this out is horrible. I agree. But also, Arne Mackey said that he knew for a while, and he just mentioned it at when Cristhian Bahena came back guilty. So that to me is just bizarre. Socially awkward. I came in late, so I didn't hear it. Well, Gavin and his friends Dalton said that they had nothing to do with it. The police didn't speak to them, and that this was absolutely crazy. What I'm thinking is maybe Gavin was in jail trying to be tough, and maybe, he might have said something stupid like that. That I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But you have to remember, guys, Lindsay Voss is Gavin's ex-girlfriend. The defense made it sound like she was just taken from the Casey store, but that was Gavin's ex-girlfriend, Lindsay Voss. Leave it to Baber says, I agree, it is bizarre. Dana, thank you, Monkey, for bringing this to us. I have to go. I will check back. Thank you again, prayers to Mollie's family. Have a good day, Dana. Thank you for coming in. I will mic down as soon as they start talking again, guys. So I'm going to change subjects real fast. What did you guys think of Candace Bly's interview with Chris Madonna? Do you guys feel that she is still involved with Summer's disappearance, or do you feel that she was not involved? Katie Ellen hit the nail on the head. I suspect Gavin was shooting off at the mouth in jail, making stuff up. He could have been trying to be cool in jail, talking stuff so maybe they would leave him alone. I mean, he is 21. He's a kid. Hey, K Smalls. Hey, guys. Matt, can you drop K Smalls' link? Let me find K Smalls' link. I want to drop Matt's link too. Searching for K Smalls on Google. Yeah, that's going to help. All right, here's K Smalls' link, guys. Sub up to her. She's got a little crime channel. She's got some interesting theories that make you go, Katie Allen, I am waiting until tonight to make up my mind on Candace interview. Chris saying it may change minds. Have me wondering how, sway which side. I hear you, Katie. Anytime, K Smalls. I can't wait to see the interview tonight. I don't really want to see the mess inside the house, but I just, that one has me stumped. Hey, Louisa. Welcome in. It has me stumped. I don't know what to think. Yeah, you mean socially awkward when she said that she put her phone on his truck and ran into the house? Yeah. Maybe it was don't they have a lot of cars in their yard? It looks kind of like a car junkyard. I think I saw 2, 3 on the aerials. Interesting. I mean, his car, her car. Jury's out on Candace. Louisa from the UK. Yeah, I remember she said that Dawn told her to call 911. But why didn't she call from her phone? Why would she throw her phone down and go grab another phone on his truck? I'm stumped. I'm stumped on it because, everyone's like, oh, usually they don't abduct strangers, but what about Robbie Wilt? I mean, Robbie Wilt, a couple weeks after Summer went missing, I posted a video. This guy literally drove up a little girl barefoot, 6 years old, riding her bike, and he got out of his car and he snatched her. And thank God the neighbors saw what went down and they called police and followed him. And it only took 30 minutes from the time she was kidnapped to get her back. But they have creepers that do this. Yeah, that's the only thing I don't understand is why she just didn't call 911 from that phone. I pray she's alive. I pray that they hit her. I pray they hit her. Yeah, Kentucky case, Smalls, in Louisville. I mean, the man just drove up and snatched her, a little barefoot girl, right in front of her house in the middle of the day. I know, Katie, it gets me too. I'm thinking if she was abducted, I'm thinking it was somebody that knew her. I can't imagine a stranger driving around for the perfect opportunity on that road, that area. Grandma gets reception. I don't know. I can't imagine cell service being good out there, but if some people said they had, what was it, satellite Wi-Fi for the phone and stuff, I don't know. Yeah, Matt's got all the great links. Matt's got a lot of interesting ideas on Suzanne Morphew. That is one case that Matt has very, very much attached himself to. Anyone find it odd that Candace mentioned a certain name? Are you talking about Jose or the Dobson person? Definitely not a stranger. Abduction confused soul said. I don't think so either. And then Jose. Didn't Jose get arrested like in Louisville for trying to kidnap a kid? And I saw an article, Case Smalls, on Jose in Kingsport. Was he the one that was arrested with like 6 other people for the sex trafficking ring on that kidnap? Hammonds, okay. Matt, the A's hole is getting special treatment. Yeah, he looks like he aged like 100 years. Okay, Tony. Okay, yeah, Tony. I saw an interesting article out of Kingsport with like 6 men that were arrested, and one of them tried to kidnap a child. And then we've got the red truck, and then you've got the yellow car. I don't know. I don't think that Grandma Candace has Summer in Wisconsin. I don't think Summer's in Wisconsin. Does anyone think Summer's in Wisconsin? Two days after Summer went missing. Interesting. Matt, drop your link, please, so that everyone can sub to you. Where, Katie, Ellen, and Summer Wells? I don't think Grandma took Summer to Wisconsin. And I do not trust Allison, and I do not trust her son. I do not believe what he said about going through Candace's phone. How many people in here don't matter if anyone goes through your phone, but how many people in here have your phone locked just for if you lose it in public? Oh, here we go, guys. I know my phone's locked. And I'm not worried about anybody getting in my phone. Matt. All right, guys, let me mic down.
It's in the car. I should have.
All right, back on the record after our morning recess. The defendant is present along with all the attorneys of record. Sir, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. Ms. Fries, you may continue with your direct examination of this witness.
Sir, what is a search warrant?
A search warrant? It's wow. It's just a document that we produce that we get signed by a judge to go search for evidence.
And so it's a formal application that you submit asking for permission to search a property. Is that right?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say, sir, that if
Is this working? It doesn't sound like it's.
Okay, good. Thank you, Karen.
Sorry, I didn't think you could hear me.
there we go. Would it be fair to say that if you were aware of a house that was reported to have sex trafficking in New Sharon, Iowa, that would have been something you would have looked into?
Yes.
Now, sir, I want to refer you back to this 50-something page document that's in front of you. It's fair to say that it contains multiple different reports attached to it. Is that right?
That is true, yes.
Some of them are a couple pages long, the reports. Is that right?
Yes.
Multiple reports are just leads that are a paragraph or so long. Is that right?
That's correct.
But it'd be fair to say that on each page, it lays out some sort of sex trafficking or prostitution. Is that correct?
The stuff I just been looking at the stuff that you have underlined, so I haven't read all of them. But
It'd be fair to say that from the document that's in front of you, that sex trafficking was mentioned multiple times in the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts. Isn't that right?
yes, and it looks like some of these you have are psychics, but yes, it is fair to say it was mentioned a bunch of times.
No further questions.
Ms. Freeze, before I turn to the state, I want to clarify in my own mind that I haven't seen the document that's in front of the witness, and I want to be clear. When did the defense receive this documentation from the state?
We received it as part of discovery originally with the case.
All right. All of that was received prior to the trial.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the state?
Yeah. That was one of my questions, Judge, but hang on just a second.
I just wanted to get it clear in my notes. So
Appreciate that. Thank you. During the investigation, Cristhian Rivera, the defendant, was developed as a potential suspect. Is that right?
That's correct.
That lead came from a review of a surveillance video taken from the house of Logan Collins. Is that right?
That is correct.
And that surveillance video showed what appeared to be a jogger running on Boundary to the north that appeared to be female, correct?
That is correct.
And investigators came to the conclusion that that was Mollie Tibbetts, correct?
Yes.
You were aware in the investigation that Mollie Tibbetts frequently went for a run in the evening, particularly in the summer. Is that right?
Yes.
Mollie Tibbetts had been residing with her boyfriend, Dalton Jack, and his brother and fiance in Brooklyn the summer of 2018. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that information, or the fact that she was living there, well, let me back up. Mollie Tibbetts was also working at a daycare in Grinnell, Iowa during the summer, correct?
That's correct.
She just completed her freshman year at Iowa, correct?
Yes.
All right. That lead that was developed off of that video from Logan Collins' residence was essentially the lead that broke open this case, correct?
That is true, yes.
Led to the actual killer of Mollie Tibbetts, correct?
That's true.
In the video from Logan Collins's residence, a black Chevy Malibu can be seen, correct?
Yes, several times.
There were distinct markings on that black Chevy Malibu, right?
Yes, there were.
Including spoked wheels, chromed handles, and a chrome mirror, correct?
That's correct.
And the chrome mirror was an aftermarket feature of that particular car. Is that right?
That's correct.
Cristhian Rivera was tied to that Chevy Malibu through a vehicle stop, well, not a vehicle stop, but an interaction that Steve Kivy had with him in August of 2018, correct?
That is correct.
Cristhian Rivera told you and other officers that he was the exclusive owner of that vehicle, correct?
That is correct.
That vehicle was found later to contain the blood of Mollie Tibbetts, correct?
That is correct.
And later on in the investigation, Cristhian Rivera was interviewed, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you've already indicated this, but he ended up confessing to the death or to the killing of Mollie Tibbetts, correct?
Yes, he did.
And he also led you and other officers directly to her body location. Is that right?
That is correct, too.
Had investigators been searching the area looking for Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes, the entire investigation.
And until Cristhian Rivera led you to the body, you did not know, and other law enforcement did not know the location of Mollie Tibbetts, correct?
Yes, he had to actually point out the location in a very large cornfield to us.
Did you ever develop any connection between Cristhian Rivera and Gavin Jones or Dalton Hanson or James Lowe?
No, Cristhian Rivera said he did this all by himself, and I've never heard those other names before a couple weeks ago.
Agent Valletta, let's get back to the timeline. On July 18th of 2018, at about 7:45 p.m. is when Mollie is seen jogging on Boundary in Brooklyn, Iowa.
That's true.
Okay, that was on July 18th of 2018, correct?
That's true. Yep.
She was not reported missing until the following day, July 19th of 2018, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, the first contact law enforcement ever had with Dalton Jack or the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts would be when the local sheriff's deputy in Poweshiek County went out to the West Des Moines address on the call, correct?
That's true, yes.
All right. When did you or other DCI get involved in the investigation?
I was first there on the 20th, and then other DCI personnel, I think, got there that next Monday, which would be the 23rd.
And is that when the investigation began in earnest?
Yes.
Were there other people that were involved in the investigation and the search for Mollie Tibbetts that were not part of law enforcement?
Several volunteer firefighters, probably most of the Brooklyn community. But yes, there were lots.
During the investigation, did the name Gavin Jones, Dalton Hanson, or James Lowe ever get raised to you?
I don't remember hearing those names until about 2 weeks ago.
Were you ever, or are you aware of any information that law enforcement was able to develop between Gavin Jones, Dalton Hanson, James Lowe, and the black Chevy Malibu that had Mollie's blood in it?
No. Cristhian Rivera said he was the sole driver of that car.
And we've heard from Mr. Maki today, an inmate that had a conversation with Gavin Jones. You were sitting here in the courtroom when that occurred, right?
Yes.
The information that was provided by Mr. Maki indicated that he was told Mollie was wrapped in some sort of covering or plastic before her body was disposed of. Are you aware of that?
I heard that, yes.
At the location where Mollie Tibbetts was located, was there any plastic that was found that would have been on or near her body?
No.
And I believe the testimony was at trial that Mollie Tibbetts' body was found over 400 feet from the roadway in a cornfield. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
In your opinion, how well concealed was the body of Mollie Tibbetts?
In my opinion, I would not have been able to find it unless it was pointed out to me.
Her body was covered in corn stalks.
That's true, yes.
We've seen photos of that area, but really the only identifier that is noticeable when you're at that location is her colorful shoes that she ran in, correct?
That's correct. She was very decomposed, so it wasn't as easy to see as someone that would have just died a day or so earlier.
And investigators learned at the location where Mollie Tibbetts was found that her shorts and underwear had been removed from her body, correct?
That is true.
And her legs were spread apart. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We have argued that there was a sexual motive to this crime. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
At least potentially, correct?
That would be my theory, yes.
And the statements that Cristhian Rivera made during his interview would also suggest that he found Mollie Tibbetts attractive. Would that be true?
Yes, he said that.
We also received information in this case from an FBI agent, Kevin Horan. Is that right?
Yes.
And that information would have placed Mollie Tibbetts being abducted just east of Brooklyn on 385th Avenue. Is that right?
Yes,
And that her body or her person would have sped up at one point several miles south of that location.
yes, I believe it's 60 miles an hour roughly.
And it was in that area that Special Agent Haran told you that you needed to focus your search.
That is correct.
And it was in that area that later the defendant, Cristhian Bahena Rivera, led you to the location of Mollie Tibbetts' body. Is that right?
Yes,
We also had another witness, Christina Stewart. Do you recall that?
yes,
Christina Stewart observed Mollie Tibbetts running east of Brooklyn. Do you recall that information?
yes,
And Christina Stewart reported that she was running in a pink jogging bra, black shorts, and a headband. Is that right?
yes.
What clothing was found on Mollie Tibbetts or near her whenever her body was recovered?
I think it was exactly as Christina Stewart described.
Which would suggest that Mollie Tibbetts was abducted east of Brooklyn, Iowa, correct?
Correct.
Transported to a location,
Yes,
and at some point was stabbed and murdered. Is that
yes,
right?
yes,
That's what the evidence shows in this case, correct?
that is correct.
Any connection at all through your investigation to Gavin Jones, Dustin Hanson, James Lowe, or anyone else other than Cristhian Rivera?
No, Cristian Rivera murdered Mollie Tibbetts.
That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Freeze, anything else to this witness?
Sir, you're aware that there's been DNA testing done in this case. Is that right?
Yes,
And specifically, it was requested by Mr. Brown that the trunk liner undergo additional testing. Isn't that right?
yes, that's true.
And you're familiar with that testing result. Is that right?
Yes,
Mollie Tibbetts' blood was found in my client's trunk. Isn't that right?
that is true.
Along with that, there were 2 other samples that were found. Isn't that right?
Yes,
And those 2 samples, they were ran against my client's DNA. Isn't that right?
yes, it would have been.
His DNA was submitted.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
And there was no match found with my client's DNA. Is that right?
that's correct.
Now, there has been no other samples submitted. Isn't that right, sir?
Yes,
You could request Gavin Jones' DNA. Is that right?
yes, I could. You're right.
You also could ask for James Lowe's DNA. Is that right?
Yes,
And you could submit those to the DNA lab to be reviewed. Isn't that correct?
yes,
But you haven't requested Gavin Jones's DNA. Is that right?
that's correct.
You haven't requested James Lowe's DNA. Is that right?
That's correct.
In fact, you haven't requested anyone's DNA other than my client's. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Now, sir, do you know what it means, a false confession?
yes, I'm very well aware of the term.
What is a false confession?
It's, isn't it kind of what it says? Someone that confesses to something that they didn't do?
Now, sir, you're familiar with the name Ron Pexa, is that right?
Yes, yes, I am.
And you're familiar with information from his daughter that he molested her, is that correct?
Yes,
You're also familiar that Mollie Tibbetts' body was found near his home, is that right?
yes.
What, if any, information or investigation have you done into Ron Pexa?
Judge, I might object. It's not relevant. This has nothing to do with your motion for newly discovered evidence.
Well, Ms. Freeze, it seems to me, if I remember correctly, I think Ron Pexa was talked about at trial. And I don't think this would fall under the category of new evidence.
Well, Gavin Jones indicated that they had a Tama County police officer with connections to the sex trafficking.
All right, with that overruled, go ahead and answer if you can.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Can you repeat it? Thank you.
What, if any, information or investigation have you done into Ron Pexa?
I think as I testified in trial, we went out, looked through his house and saw that he didn't have a torture room. If I remember correctly, that was maybe a week or two before Cristhian Rivera confessed. So I don't know. I don't think we did anything past that with Ron Pexa.
You're aware that Mollie Tibbetts' Fitbit quit sending signals around his residence, isn't that
So,
right?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning again on Ron Pexa. They knew about him at trial. They could have followed up on this. They could have asked other questions. They didn't do it. This is not newly discovered evidence.
Well, Ms. Freeze, again, I thought the direction you said we were going here is there was going to be some connection to Tama County here and him being law enforcement there.
Gavin Jones identified a Tama County deputy or
Yeah.
Tama County police officer as being involved.
So ask about that.
Was Ron Pexa a Tama County deputy, sir?
I think he's a reserve deputy that works at the courthouse, but I'm not quite sure what his function is.
And
But
that's-
yes, that is true. He's a Tama County deputy.
No further questions.
Steve, have anything else to this witness?
A couple other things. Who told you that he had exclusive use of the black Malibu where Mollie Tibbetts' blood was found?
Cristhian Rivera did.
Did he ever indicate in any of the interviews that you're aware of with Pamela Romero or any other officer or any other person that anyone ever used his car, stolen his car, or that the black Malibu was ever missing?
No.
That's all.
Anything else to this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You're excused. Why don't you go ahead and leave that document there if you would. Yeah. Thank you. Defense may call their next witness.
We call Samantha Ricks.
Judge, may we approach, please?
Yes.
All right, let me unmute real quick. So Samantha Bix, she is the one that actually called Xavier Harrelson in missing. She's the one that is friends with Sarah. And she's also going to sit here and say that she knew Sarah and James probably lived together. Interesting. So here will come in Xavier's name connection being mentioned. I'll stop talking when they come back. Yeah, so Samantha Bix was the one that was on Molly Golightly's channel. Remember Kay Smalls? And she was the one that said that she knew that James and Sarah were dating. And that, but they got evicted. Sarah and James lived together. I put it out in my last video, but I think it was 2019 they got evicted? Yeah. Bix. I thought it was Samantha Bix. I could be wrong. Yeah, I don't understand the Samantha connection except where they were friends. She called in Xavier missing and that Sarah and James lived together and they got evicted. And I put that eviction in my last video, but I think it was like 3 years ago. Okay. And there's my rooster. Okay, we're still muted. Okay. Ricks, Samantha Ricks. All right, let me mute down. Oh, here we go.
Morning. Again, before you're seated, I'll swear you. Can I get you to raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about it will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you go ahead and be seated there. And again, ma'am, just make sure you speak up if you would, and maybe get a little closer to the microphone. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Ms.
Ma'am, please state your full name.
Samantha Ricks.
Ma'am, currently you live in Montezuma, Iowa. Is that right?
Yes.
at a time previous, did you live in a trailer park in Montezuma, Iowa?
Yes, I actually just moved out at the end of February.
Were you ever acquainted with Xavier Harrelson?
Yes. He's been on camping trips with us. He's been to all of my kids' birthday parties. He's spent nights in my home. He's my 6-year-old son's best friend.
Do you know Sarah Harrelson?
Yeah, Xavier's mom. We've talked, on many different occasions over the last 3-4 years.
So you're acquainted with both of them, is
Yes.
that right?
Yep.
But your ties would be more through your child being friends with Xavier, is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Now, you are the person that reported Xavier Harrelson missing, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know a man named James Lowe?
Judge, I'm going to object. This has no bearing or relevance to this case. There is no connection between James Lowe and Mollie Tibbetts' disappearance. My concern is that this is an ongoing investigation relating to a missing 10-year-old kid.
Okay. Mr. Brown, I understand your concern. I understand your objection. I am not going to sustain your objection to this question because it has to do with Mr. Lowe. So I will allow her to answer that. But again, I'm sensitive to the issue you've raised. We may get there depending on where we go. So, ma'am, do you remember the question?
If I know James Lowe?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Is he somebody that used to be a boyfriend of Sarah Harrelson?
Yes.
Same objection, Judge.
Same ruling.
Where, before he was put in jail, where did James Lowe reside?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Same ruling. Go ahead and answer if you know, ma'am.
There was a camper out at Fun Valley, the old Fun Valley ski resort here, just southeast or southwest of town. That's where he'd been staying. That's where I had gone the day that Sarah contacted me.
And Sarah Harrelson contacted you that she couldn't find Xavier, is that right?
Yes.
And what did she say to you?
Objection. Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead, ma'am.
She had asked that I drive out to see if maybe Xavier happened to be with James Lowe. And I mean, I did. I drove out there. He wasn't there. There was no vehicle or anything. So I left a note with my number stating that Xavier had been missing since, I think it was about 11:30 that morning. And this would have been closer to 4:45, 5 o'clock when I arrived at the camper. She didn't call me until after 4.
Did you know Xavier to spend time with James Lowe?
Judge, I'm going to object. It's not relevant. It's immaterial. Same objection.
Well, Mr. Brown, again, I'm sympathetic to your plight and I tend to agree with it, but I'm going to allow the defense a little more to develop this. But I would just again remind the defense who we're here on. New trial in the Rivera case, right?
Correct.
So develop this, but we need to get back to that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, let's go then.
Could you reread the question?
Do you know Xavier to spend time with James Lowe?
After him and Sarah separated, I can't recall of an instance of Xavier leaving with him. I know that he's been back to the home. I don't know. I don't want to necessarily say hanging out, but I've never known Xavier to leave with him after they separated.
So you knew James Lowe to come back to the Harrelson home, is that right?
Yeah.
And so even though Sarah and him were no longer together, they would still spend time together.
Yes.
So you go out to the campground and you look for Mr. Lowe, is that right?
Right.
And you can't find him.
And nowhere to be found. The camper's shut down, locked up. So I left a little note in the door hole of the camper door. And the next day with DCI agent Chris Schwager, I took him out there to show him where it was and that I had been there and the note wasn't there anymore. So somebody had
Hang
gotten.
on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, ma'am, but this is becoming non-responsive to any question posed by the defense.
Sustained. Next question.
Ma'am, you left this note with your phone number, is that right?
Yes.
Did you ever receive a call from James Lowe?
No. And I found that odd.
So the next day, you said that you assisted the DCI, is that right?
Yep.
And what were they asking for your assistance on?
Objections far too broad. This is not relevant. This gets into sensitive information potentially with this investigation. It's has nothing to do with this case.
Sustained.
Did you go back to the James Lowe residence?
With the DCI agent, yes.
And why did you go back to the James Lowe residence?
To show him.
Same objection, Your Honor.
Ms. Freeze, I want to get to where we need to go with this, and that is what we're here on. And I'm not finding it.
Your Honor, James Lowe is connected with the Xavier Harrelson disappearance.
That
And
part we've established.
James Lowe is also involved in sex trafficking. Gavin Jones, so I can't connect the dots unless I present a case.
Judge, there's no evidence the defense has given the court, either in a pleading or anything, that James Lowe is involved in sex trafficking. The investigation they keep referring to in Mahaska County, he wasn't even charged with anything relating to sex trafficking.
It is preposterous that Mr. Brown says there's no evidence of sex trafficking. Mr. Brown gets up in front of juries in sexual abuse cases all the time.
Hold on, Ms. Freeze. Ms. Freeze. Again, I'm going to give you a little more leeway here, but we need to get to where we need to go here, and we're spending too much time on Xavier Harrelson than we are on this case, and so I want to get there.
Ma'am, did you go out to James Lowe's camper with the DCI?
Yes.
Why did you go out there?
Because he didn't know where it was, so I took him out there and showed him exactly which camper. That's it.
When you got out there, was the note there?
No.
Was James Lowe there?
No.
Now, you knew James Lowe to have a criminal history, is that right?
Yes.
In fact, I think he used your car at one point to commit a crime, is that right?
Yep.
You also know James Lowe to be a drug dealer, is that right?
Yes.
What sorts of drugs does he deal?
I know of meth.
How do you know that he is a methamphetamine dealer?
I'm a recovering addict myself.
So has he dealt to you before?
Yes.
Do you believe James Lowe has connections to the drug cartels?
Objection. This calls for speculation. And what's the relevance of this?
Well, before I rule, what is the relevance?
That this is a sex trafficking ring, and that often drug trafficking is part of sex trafficking. The woman that reported that she was sex trafficked was sex trafficked because of her addiction.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I have my doubts about the relevancy, but given the understanding of Mr. Brown that you'll be able to cross-examine, we'll address it that way. So objections overruled. You may answer the question, ma'am.
Okay, what was the question again?
Do you believe that James Lowe has cartel connections?
He's, up until the last 3 to 6 months that I've known him, he's been down and out compared to what he has been the last few years that I've known him. I mean, he's always been supplied, and I mean, I'm sure he probably knows big players. I don't know personally of any of that information, but he's got some big people somewhere.
James Lowe, the crime involving your vehicle, which you didn't have anything to do
No,
with,
I was at home.
but it involved him stealing. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
James Lowe was having money problems. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually just gave him a minivan. It was shortly after Christmas. He was so down and out. I was getting ready to send it to the junkyard, and I gave him the van just for him to sleep in. And I mean, it barely drove, but it moved.
What does it mean to be fronted drugs?
Judge, I'm going to object to the relevance.
Sustained.
No further questions.
Mr. Brown, any cross-examination?
I don't have any questions for this witness. Thank you very much.
Okay, ma'am, thank you for being here. You're excused. Before we go any further, let's take up the matter. Mr. Brown, did you have a chance to review those affidavits?
I apologize, Judge. I did not. I had something else going on at break.
Well, we just need to make sure that that issue's still
I'm
out
sorry.
there.
I should have done it at break and I didn't. It
All right.
won't take me long.
Okay. Defense may call their next witness.
Call Ben Johnston, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Johnston. Mr. Johnston, I'll swear you in.
Yes, sir.
You swear affirm the testimony about here will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me seated, please. Go ahead, Mr. Freeze.
Thank you. State your name, please.
Ben Johnston
How are you employed, sir?
with Manhasset County Sheriff's Office.
In what capacity?
I'm a narcotics detective
How long have you been so employed?
with the Sheriff's Office, going on 4 years,
How long have you been assigned with narcotics?
3 years.
What training, education, experience do you have particular to narcotics?
Upon graduating college for criminal justice, I was hired by police department in Oskaloosa in 2010. I then got hired, like I said, approximately 4 years ago with the Sheriff's Office. During my time as a police officer with Oskaloosa, along with my time during serving for Manhasset County Sheriff's Office, I've went to multiple schoolings, trainings in regards to narcotics and narcotic distribution. Those trainings consist of various things pertaining to narcotics, identifying drugs, how drugs are distributed, how drugs are manufactured or grown, the safe way to dispose of or to take down certain marijuana grows, methamphetamine labs, things of that sort.
In your training and experience with narcotics, do you also have training and experience in the area of human trafficking?
Not specifically human trafficking, no.
Do you find in your training and experience that those two tend to run together once in a while?
I have not had a exact experience of that myself.
But are you trained in that?
I have been informed of that.
What information have you been informed of in that regard?
Very vague information. It is discussed in narcotics trainings that at times these things can go hand in hand.
In your training, restrict that. In your experience, have you come to know an individual named James Lowe?
Yes.
Is he known generally in the Mahaska, Poweshiek County area to be involved in drug trafficking?
Yes.
Has intelligence been given to you that James Lowe, in the calendar year 2018 and beyond, possibly involved in the trafficking of women for sex?
I had received one alleged complaint of that.
And that was in 2019?
Yes.
And who gave that complaint to you?
A female, Brianna.
Judge, I'm going to object. First of all, this is not a charge. This is information that's already been redacted from the record that the defense filed. So I'm not sure it's necessary to use the young woman's name.
Sustain the objection. You've established that there's one example of this happening.
Yeah.
We don't need to get into specifics any more than that.
Okay. So it was a young woman you spoke to?
Correct.
And she was from the Mahaska County area?
At the time I spoke with her, yes.
This young woman, how did she come to your attention?
She had had an interaction with law enforcement the evening before or the night before. And
go ahead.
It was the next day. She had came to the Bahana County Law Center to speak further about some reports that she made to them. I was then contacted.
This female, how old was she?
I believe in her 20s.
And she was interacting with a state trooper, I believe, the night before, correct?
That is correct.
And that state trooper, do you call his name?
Yes.
Who's that?
Brad Cubitt.
And Trooper Cubitt, he's someone who is trained and experienced and has experience in law enforcement?
Yes.
Someone whose opinion you trust?
Yes.
He picked this female up. It was the evening of, I think, March 19, 2019, or March 20, somewhere in there.
Correct.
And she was walking along Highway 92 outside of Oskaloosa. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What time of day?
I just know it was late in the evening, I believe.
And what were the circumstances behind Trooper Cubitt picking her up?
If I recall correctly, I believe it was a citizen that had passed by and observed this young lady walking along the highway, appeared to be distressed, and called law enforcement to check on her.
And Trooper Cubitt obviously did that, correct?
That's correct.
Did this young female then, well, first of all, was she in distress to your knowledge?
I don't recall exactly what was going on that evening. I was not present.
But Trooper Cubitt was able to get some interesting information from this young female that caused her to come to see you the next day.
That's correct.
Is that something in your training and experience that often happens, that a state trooper picks somebody up along the road and then has you come to the sheriff's office the next day to give a statement?
Yes.
Happens all the time?
Yes.
How many times in your career has it happened?
A lot. I couldn't give an accurate number on it.
So when she came the next day, she'd obviously made some allegations that were, I guess, narcotics related. That's how you got involved?
Correct.
Did she make any other allegations generally that you were anticipating hearing the morning of May 20th?
He had informed me prior to any interaction or anything that I have overheard with her that she had made some statements about possibly being assaulted sexually.
Okay. And she had talked about being trafficked?
She did use that term, yes.
Okay. And the trooper involved here, when he brings her or has her come to you the next day, is it fair for me to assume that you thought that the trooper thought, terrible question, it was a credible report at that point?
Yeah, I believe he believed what she was stating, yeah.
Yeah, it was cause for concern at least.
Correct.
So when this female came to the Oskaloosa Sheriff or Bahana County Sheriff's Office, is that where she went?
Yes.
What time of day was it?
I believe mid-morning sometime.
Did she come alone?
I believe she did.
And you interviewed her?
I did not.
Okay, who interviewed her?
Agent DeCamp from DCI, I believe.
Were you present for the interview?
I off and on, I was not present within the room. In the way our recording rooms are set up, there's a viewing room that you can monitor the screens from inside the recording area.
But you observed at least part of it?
Bits and pieces of it, yes.
Adam DeCamp of the DCI then reported to you what he was hearing?
Yes.
Now, when this female came to the Bahana County Sheriff's Office that day, did you get a chance to greet her and show her around?
I don't believe I did.
Did you get a chance to observe her demeanor?
Again, through the viewing area of the interview room.
How did she appear to you?
She appeared calm, spoke freely with law enforcement.
Did she appear to be under the influence of any narcotics?
At that time, no.
Did she appear to be under the influence of any alcohol?
I don't believe so.
She appeared to be sleep deprived.
I don't believe so.
So she was calm and cooperative.
Yes.
So after she gave her statement to Agent DeCamp, did you then visit with Agent DeCamp?
Yes.
And based upon your conversations with Agent DeCamp, you learned that this individual gave information concerning being sexually assaulted, drugged, and sexually trafficked out of a home in New Sharon, Iowa, right?
Yes, those are the statements she gave.
And at that point in time, you thought those statements to be credible, I assume.
At that point, I believe that we had a duty to fulfill to verify whether her statements are credible or not.
Okay. So that doesn't answer my question. You thought they were credible statements?
Yeah.
And that address was 405 East Market Street in New Sharon, right?
Yes.
And that's an address known to your task force as being involved in narcotics activity?
That's correct.
Who owned that address?
A male identified as Adam Moshman.
Known to you to be involved in narcotics trafficking at that time?
Yes.
And James Lowe known to frequent that residence?
Yes.
James Lowe known to sell drugs out of that residence?
I don't know that for a fact. I have heard statements of that.
James Lowe appeared to be about 50 years old at that time?
Correct.
Okay. So in your training and experience in your job duties, part of what you do is author search warrants, right?
That is correct.
And sometimes search warrants are based upon third-party information, like in this case, correct?
Correct.
In this case, you use an informant, the young lady, right?
Correct.
Now, she wasn't unnamed. She was named, so that lends some credibility to her statement, correct?
That's correct.
But the judge has to make some findings about an informant's credibility before the judge will give you permission to search someone's home. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And part of what you do as an officer who authors search warrants is that you essentially vouch for this person's credibility, right?
That's correct.
And that's in what we typically see in a search warrant application as informants attachment B. And you use that in this case, right?
That's correct.
You told the judge that the information supplied by the informant has been corroborated by law enforcement personnel. You recall checking that box?
Yes.
What information do you refer to there that was corroborated by law enforcement personnel?
Judge, I'm going to object as to relevance. There's still no connection here between this investigation and Mollie Tibbetts.
Overruled. Go ahead.
The young female had given descriptions of the residence along with specifics when it comes to the nature of surveillance cameras with surrounding the residence. During that part, I had went to the residence and observed these things to be true. That corroborated those statements that she made to be true to law enforcement.
So you don't make a practice of presenting information to a judge to search someone's home that is, in your opinion, not credible, right?
Right.
Permission to approach?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Priest.
Deputy, I put in front of you what I've marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit A. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
If you take a moment and thumb through that, let me know when you're finished.
Okay.
What is that document?
That would be to be my application, search warrant application.
Does that document fairly and accurately depict, but for the redacted portions, your search warrant application presented to the judge on or about, I don't see it's dated, but in March of 2019?
I believe so.
I'd offer Defendant's Exhibit A, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection that it's the affidavit. I would object to relevance or any connection to this case. And I'm not sure that they don't already have a Defendant's Exhibit A somewhere. I'm not sure the marking is accurate.
Mr. Freeze, do you know anything about whether you have an A?
I think this is the only A.
Assuming this is the only A, this A is admitted.
Agent, I want you to go to page, what says page 5 of 13 on your affidavit. Now, this search warrant was authored and granted in March of 2019, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, were you involved at all in the search for Mollie Tibbetts?
No, I was not.
Your task force is the mine task force?
That's correct.
What areas does that cover?
We cover Mahaska County, Marion County, Polk County, parts of Poweshiek County, specifically Grinnell area. It's a multi-jurisdictional task force, so we have officers from surrounding agencies all assigned to the area.
Anyone from Poweshiek County on your task force?
No, there's not.
You routinely share intelligence with Grinnell Police Department and Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
That's something, if you get information from someone in rural Poweshiek County dealing drugs or buying drugs, whatever, you share that among agencies?
If we believe that it would have a direct, I guess, line to them, yes, we would share that.
Okay. In your search warrant on page 5, your application affidavit, at the last paragraph on the bottom of the page, this female stated that in May of 2018, she was at a Casey's in Brooklyn, Iowa. Is that your recollection?
What page are you looking at?
Page 5. Page 5.
Okay, page 5 of mine must not be the same page 5 as you.
So page 8 at the bottom of the right, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was looking at the top.
Okay, can you say that again?
This female who made the report stated that in May of 2018, she was dating someone and she met up at the Casey's in Brooklyn with a man named James Lowe.
That's correct.
Okay, so this all started in May of 2018, correct?
Correct.
And James Lowe put $10 worth of gas in this female's car to get her to go to New Sharon, right?
That is what she said, yes.
And that she followed him to New Sharon with the promise of more gas, right?
Correct.
And that she did that and then wound up in James Lowe's home somehow, or that 405 East Market Street address.
Correct.
Again, James Lowe is about 50 years old.
Correct.
What did the female relay about going into this home at 405 East Market in May of 2018? What happened to her?
After getting gas at both places, she was with her boyfriend at the time, and they had traveled back to the address on East Market, and they had accompanied Mr. Lowe into the house, where they then sat around, conversed, listened to music, and smoked marijuana.
At some point, was she drugged by Mr. Lowe?
At that point, she said that she was shot up, which would be somebody injecting you with drugs.
And was that person Mr. Lowe?
She advised, yes, it was.
And then what happened to her after that?
She said after that, she doesn't really recall anything that had occurred.
In your training and experience, if someone is shot up with something and they lose time or fail to recall, what's your experience in training tell you as to what kind of drug that would likely be?
Checks, calls for speculation. Has nothing to do with the Mollie Tibbetts case.
I'm going to sustain. I mean, the record says, just shot up. I'm not sure it matters what drug it was.
Do you have information concerning narcotics being sold out of 405 East Market, correct?
Yes.
Those narcotics include things like opioids?
That's not the information that I received.
Okay. Is there any information at all that anyone has shared with you concerning that?
Same objection, Judge. This is irrelevant.
Sustained.
She also told you that she was continued to be shot up for a long period of time at 405 East Market, right?
That's correct.
How long a period of time was she said she was shot up at 405 East Market?
Objection to relevance.
Overruled. The witness may answer if he knows.
I believe it was randomly through the period of time of May to August.
And during May through August, she was shot up. And where was she kept inside that house?
Into an upstairs bedroom.
And was she allowed to leave that house?
She advised no, that she didn't feel she was.
Did she tell you who was in control of her in that house during the May through August?
She advised that it was James Lowe.
And did she tell you what was happening to her in that house from May through August?
She felt that she was being assaulted.
Was she able to recall it very well?
No, she was not.
Then how was she able to come to the opinion that she was assaulted in that house?
Her description was that she was sore in her private area.
Did she ever ascribe any statements to James Lowe that furthered her opinion about being assaulted?
Not that I can recall.
She never told you, or you heard, or put in your affidavit that James Lowe would say to people, was it worth it? Was it good?
She did make a statement that she had overheard a conversation of him asking an individual those things, yes.
After someone had been in the room with her?
I don't know that they had been in the room with her, and I don't believe she made that statement either.
Lowe would ask other males that she would hear him say, did you have a good time?
From my recollection, that was only the one time she made that statement, was referencing one incident.
She told you that she would be injected or shot up every morning.
I don't know if she spoke every morning, but she did speak often.
Okay. If your affidavit says she was injected every morning, that would be the more accurate testimony?
Yes.
And she would wake up feeling foggy, dazed, and sexually violated.
That's correct.
And that was every morning.
I believe so.
What's a trap house?
Trap house can have a different definition to different people. To me specifically, a trap house is, we'll call it a residence where various crimes are committed, various people are allowed to stay, drugs are distributed from those areas, people come and go frequently.
405 East Market meets that criteria, wouldn't you agree?
I would say so.
You also learned about a second individual who indicated that James Lowe was possibly intending to traffic or abduct another female, right?
Yes, I did.
And that was in March of 2019, correct?
I believe so.
Tell us about that.
So I had received just a brief statement from an officer of the Oskaloosa Police Department that had advised they received the information of they felt they were being followed.
Okay, and this is a young female?
Yes.
And this young female identified James Lowe as the person who was following her?
They believe that was the male, yes.
And that's included in your application as well?
Correct.
After the search warrant was executed and you had this information about the abduction occurring in 2018 from Brooklyn, did it strike you that it was information you might want to share with the state or the county attorney or the Poweshiek County Sheriff concerning the Mollie Tibbetts case?
I don't believe her to be abducted from Brooklyn. She, up until the point of where she advised that she was injected, her statements appeared to be she was acting as a willing participant during the time of her getting money or fuel at the gas stations from Mr. Lowe. It was her choice and her, as well as her boyfriend's, to follow him to another gas station and then again to go back to the house with him where they engaged in conversation and drug use.
Okay, well, let me rephrase it then. With the information that you got that this all started in Brooklyn with James Lowe in Brooklyn, and I guess inviting them or inviting her to New Sharon, did you think to possibly share that information with the Poweshiek County Sheriff or the state of Iowa concerning the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
No, I did not.
Did anyone share it with the state to your knowledge?
Not that I know. I don't know.
That's all I have.
State, have any questions?
The investigation that you conducted that you just described with Mr. Freeze, James Lowe was the focus of that, correct?
That's correct.
What was James Lowe charged with as a result of your investigation?
I don't believe any charges were filed.
Did you charge him with sex trafficking or any type of sexual abuse charge?
No.
Is that because the investigation determined that there was not enough credible evidence to charge him with that crime?
Correct.
At the end of the investigation, the young woman that you were dealing with, did she admit that she may have made statements that or provided information that she was having trouble remembering?
Yes.
There was another individual that you mentioned with Mr. Freeze. Who was that? Another person who was a suspect.
Adam Moshman.
Adam Moshman was actually charged with some weapons violations. Is that right?
That is correct.
Nothing related to sexual abuse or sex trafficking, correct?
Correct.
Gavin Jones, a name familiar to you?
I'm aware of who it is. Yes.
Was not connected to this investigation anyway, was he?
No.
And Dalton Hanson, did that name ever come up during your investigation into James Lowe or to involving this particular victim?
No, it did not.
And any mention of Mollie Tibbetts or any connection to Mollie Tibbetts at all?
No, there was not.
All right. And this particular investigation that you just described with Mr. Freeze occurred or began almost 7 months after Mollie Tibbetts was recovered in Powashik County. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Don't mean to make you do math on the stand. I apologize, but
Right.
She was recovered in August of 2018, and your investigation began in Mahaska County March of the following year. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions of this witness from the defense?
Briefly, Gavin Jones, known to you as someone to be involved with narcotics?
Yes.
Known to you to be someone who is violent?
Not that I'm personally aware of.
No one's ever reported to you that he has a propensity toward violence?
If the object's been asked and answered, he doesn't know.
Sustained.
Do you have knowledge that he has no contact orders against him?
I do not know that. No.
Do you know him to carry weapons?
No, I do not.
That's all I have.
State, have anything else?
Nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Sir, you're excused. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let me step down. Counsel, could I have you approach, please?
What are you guys thinking about what's going on? Do you think the defense is reaching, or do you think they actually have something? What are you guys thinking about what's going on? Oh, here we go.
Mr. Brown, at this time, are you prepared to make record on the affidavits?
I can, Judge.
Would you please?
Yeah, we have no objection to the affidavit of Lindsey Boss or to the affidavit of Scott Gracious, which have been supplied to us through EMS. The affidavit of Corey, I'm not sure you pronounce his last name, Bebe, and Shay Moore, we'd object on the basis of relevance. Corey has to do with a child abuse investigation relating, I'm not really sure what that has to do with anything, actually. And it also includes a notice of child abuse assessment, which I don't think should be made public, and photos of a child, an infant who apparently was the subject of his child abuse assessment. So we would object to that. If the court does admit it, we would ask that you seal that particular document in its entirety. And then Shay Moore has to do with Xavier Harrelson. Again, I don't believe there's any relevance here to that, and we would object to Shay Moore's affidavit on the basis of relevance.
Okay, so based on agreement, I will consider the affidavits of Voss and Gracious, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I want to hear from the defense about the concerns about the assessment and pictures being being made part of Beal's affidavit.
It was submitted under seal.
There's already an order there?
Yes, we asked for the order either Thursday or Friday of last week.
Okay, with that then, Beal will be, consider that also. And then Shay Moore, tell me you've heard Mr. Brown's concern. What's the defense's position regarding Shay Moore's affidavit?
It's been submitted. I don't think that I submitted it under seal. I would have no objection to the court submitting it under seal.
Okay, what I'm going to do is, again, I will consider the Shay Moore affidavit, but ask Ms. Freeze that you prepare, and actually the sooner the better, get me an order saying that is also sealed.
All right.
What we will do then is we'll be in recess now until we'll be back ready to go at 1:15. Thank you.
Oh, that made me laugh so hard. I'm gonna tear those muscles. Okay, so guys, it is going to be like what is it now? 12:50 Eastern. So really it's 11:50 Central Time. What is that? 2 hours and 20 minutes? Yeah, something. Yeah, we've got 2 hours, 2 hours and about 20 minutes. So I am going to go ahead and take care of some things in the real world. And then I am going to come back and start it like a half an hour early. Okay, so it's almost noon, so we've got an hour and 20 minutes. All right. What did you guys think of? I don't know what they're trying to turn. I still haven't heard one connection to Mollie Tibbetts besides the fact that Gavin told Arne that he did it, right? Or like where else was the connection to Mollie? I mean, I'm not a professional. I'm just a wannabe nosy PI, but I get that there could be a connection because Gavin said what he said. I also think Gavin, if he did say it, he was probably just trying to be a big, tough 21-year-old in the big house. I'm almost out of fingernails. But I don't think... I don't know. Have you ever known anyone? Have you ever heard any stories in the ST business where somebody takes their family members or an ex kind of stepson deal and actually traffic them? I mean, I've never heard of trafficking your family or your ex-girlfriend's kids. I mean, I could be wrong. Have you guys ever heard of that? I mean, it would kind of be like a really, like, hello, here's a connection. The kid's missing and I'm running a trap house. Yeah. High hopes. Are they pinning it like a trap house is where they all gathered and, of course, knew each other and were business partners? If you deal drugs, you usually don't deal people. So that, you know what, high hopes? I do not know. What they're saying is Adam Mushman owned this house. And I've only heard about drugs. Like, the police only mentioned drug charges. The only other thing that was mentioned was the girl said that she was brought there and drugged and used for whatever reasons. But then again, the other girl, Lindsay Voss, who's going to claim she was kidnapped, is Gavin Jones' ex-girlfriend. She also claims that Gavin told her that he killed Mollie, not including supposedly him telling Arnie Mackey that he did it. To me, if he said it, to me, he sounds like some little punk that is trying to be cool and tough. High hopes the police will only mention drugs, cause the police cover up trafficking always. But don't you think if it was a big trap house, they would have, it would have been more than 2 girls? I don't know. The only thing I was hoping to get out of this was a connection to Xavier and where he was. But do people switch, like, if you're into snatching girls, are you into snatching guys too at the same location? Or I don't know how that works. We need to get somebody who knows about trafficking. I want to speak to the man that was on the Chris Thorne show, the one that deals with all that trafficking in Bakersfield, California. You guys know who I'm talking about? But they're not mentioning it at High Hopes. I get what you're saying, High Hopes. I'm sure there were more than 2 girls that all this cop caught wind of. In my last video, guys, it's not long. The 2 Bahena videos I did, it shows Lindsay. Yeah, she was in jail. She had her, I think she's in jail right now. She has a record. And I think she's in jail right now because she was actually on Vine Link. And that's people that are in the system right now. Hey, OG Bosco. I don't know, socially awkward. If she was hanging out with Gavin and Gavin was hanging out with James Lowe in the smokehouse, then maybe she was. The ones that are in jail now are Dalton, Gavin, Mackey, and James Lowe. Adam Mushman's not in jail at the current time. High hopes they didn't do that just 2 times and they won't mention it. They are part of it. These cops don't shady beep to me, so I know what they are capable of. You could be right. But if James Lowe took Xavier, where did he put him? And he's in jail now for a while. Like, where's Xavier? Did he sell him to someone else? I don't see that. So High Hopes, you honestly think that somebody who was living with a woman would take his kid and sell him at a trap house? And you wouldn't think that it's going to tie back to you if that is what you are being accused of, or Xavier takes a fall because the police don't want to find out? I don't know about that. What do you think, Case Smalls? You think this has anything to do with Mollie Tibbetts or Xavier, or do you think they're reaching? And then I'm going to end this, guys, but I'm going to come back a half an hour early. So 12, let me see. I'm so confused with being an hour ahead. 45 minutes. 12:45 Central Time. High Hope thinks that most people that are locked up are innocent, and the police pin it on these people. Yeah, but Xavier was they broke up years ago. I don't know, guys. As far as this case, in my opinion, I don't even think the judge is going to give this kid a new trial. And I pray that Xavier is somewhere and James Lowe knows, but I don't know. I just think it would have been kind of brought out by now. Yeah, it's been years later. All right, guys. I am going to come back, Matt. I hope to see you 45 minutes from now. So I'll start it up a half an hour early. And I'll show you guys the pictures of the key players if you haven't seen them. And I can show you the trap house. I agree, OG. All right, guys. Thank you for coming in. Matt, thank you. Like always. Okay, Smalls, I'm going to email you after all of this. And depending on if it runs into Candace Bly's part 2, I may email you after that. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Have a great day, and thank you for coming in.